Um, yeah, we're ready.
Okay, I expected you to crank the bus, then I'll drive.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. We were scheduled to do something pretty special today. We're going to look at a history of a Kabbalah, and we're going to talk about why this is important that we do this, uh, as it plugs into the nature of what we do and how it helps mankind, and why this truth, as well as every other truth that we've uncovered, needs to be done. So, if you have questions or and this, in doing some research and looking at stuff, this is such a broad undertaking. I'm not sure we it's something we could finish in one sitting, but it looks like a nice journey to take. So here we are. Uh, Pastor, the floor is yours to start wherever you see fit.
Um, you made mention of our having need to do this. Would you mute your phone, please? I mean, you spoke of having need to do this, but we do, very much so, because we have up to this point been dictated to about how far back do we go to understand our history, and the most accepted distance is to the water's edge, beginning with slavery. And if we go beyond slavery, it stops in West Africa and Ghana. So my our goal, I guess, and my desire is to go to our beginnings, and the word of Kabbalah rightfully used because of our desires. In ancient Kush, it is said that the Kushites wrote in the understandings of spirituality that desire is the beginning of all creation. So when we talk about our desires, we are very much in line with the energy flows of our ancestors. And we did not know that that was one of the major aspects of creation. Now, this is the major reason that I think this is very necessary. The James Baldwin said that an African American is an African without memory and an American without privilege. And today, we hope to revitalize that memory and create privilege for everyone. The reason this date was chosen, it was not an arbitrary thing. What happened is I was talking to Evelyn about something. I don't even remember what we were talking about, but it was right after I made the announcement that we would like to do this. And she says to me, why don't you do it on 11/11? And I said, well, is 11/11 on Saturday? She says, I don't know. They're casually talking. And she looked at her calendar and said, yeah, it's on Saturday. So this was ordained from the beginning for us to do this. And as we go forward, you will see how I arrived at this belief that this has been ordained from the beginning. It is a massive amount of information. And at some point, well, George, maybe now, talk about for a moment, if you will, the significance of 11/11. And the reason I ask that before we begin is because we are going to enter the gateway to beginnings in a few moments.
Yeah, good morning, family. And again, it's just, blessing to see everyone. And when I looked at the number 11, it was very significant for me personally, because when 11/11/11 is when we met as teachers. And when you look at the date, 11/11/2023, those numbers add up to 11. And when we talk about, Barbara so, eloquently wrote some notes, it talked about walking through the portal, walking through the open portal. And so, again, it was just very significant. And if we can just imagine 11/11/11 and just looking at that from an image or from a reception, it reflects a pathway. It reflects an open door. It reflects a walking through. And so again, with this number 11, spiritually, it emphasizes or it symbolizes enlightenment and inspiration. And when we look at the number 11, it also represents the female and the male equality as a vibrational frequency of balance. And I know we've heard that word often, balance. And so when we look at, that aspect of the number 11, Pastor, that's, and everyone, that's what it represents in terms of just this, the enlightenment and inspiration. And at the same time, the female and masculine equality and the frequency of balance. So that's what I was able to, get from the number 11. But I know it was a very, again, powerful day for me, when I was in everyone's presence. So I just want to share those thoughts on number 11, unless there's any questions.
Thank you. Questions or comments?
Hey, good morning, everybody. Yeah, I just wanted to add to the understanding of 11/11. It is, as we said, a gateway. It is the sort of representing the balance between masculine and feminine. If you look at the tree of life, it is the sort of two main columns of the tree of life, the masculine and the feminine on the right and the left, or depending on which way you're looking at it. But it is the two sort of polarities of the spiritual self that define the pathway, because the gateway and the pathway are the same thing. Well, in a way, but they are both defined by their edges, quote unquote. And spiritually, we are talking about the relationship between the masculine and feminine, those two sort of polarities of the self. And it is in learning to balance those two and sort of harmonize the relationships between those two aspects of the self that the pathway is walked, that the gateway is entered and moved through. So whenever you see 11/11 on the clock, if you have a digital clock, it's easier, but offhand, if you're not thinking about it, all of a sudden you have this urge to look at the clock and you see it, that is very much an indication that the mindset or the vibration you are generating at that time is one that is on the path that is correct for you to be walking for your own spiritual growth and awakening. So it is a combination of many things. It is geometrical, it is numerical, it is metaphysical, and it is all a representation of walking that path of spiritual evolution in a harmonious and balanced way. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. I suppose we need to begin at the beginning, since Kevalan speaks to the idea of the womb of life, or the Garden of Eden specifically. And Kevalan is the original name for Africa, and it is considered the oldest word of indigenous origin. And Kevalan was changed to Africa partly out of ignorance and partly based on racial decisions. If we look at our beginning, we have to go to East Africa, and our beginnings were not in what is called Egypt. The people who were the original people on earth, the Twa or the Umbuti, depending on which language you're using to identify them, were inhabitants of Southeastern Africa. And when we talk about the beginnings of our people, of our ancestors, when we look at it archaeologically, there was found a footprint in the lava from a volcano, and it was dated at least 4 million years ago. And there are no skeletal remains found outside of Africa that's more than 500,000 years old. So this speaks volumes about the origin of humanity. And maybe we will get further into that when we start talking about the different people who inhabit the earth. So the point that I'm making, hopefully, is that our ancestors are more than 4 million years old. And what happened during this period, that as far back as we can go, in labeling the people, naming the people as Twa people, when they were discovered, the Twa people were discovered still living in Africa, in the manner that they have lived for obviously hundreds of millions of years. They were called pygmies in a very derogatory way, and by Europeans, and some were captured and put in zoos in the early 1900s and late 1800s. The villages of the Twa began to expand, and as they expanded, the kingdoms began to develop, and the people became known to themselves as Kushites, or the kingdom of Kush, as they labeled it. And the kingdom of Kush actually expanded to what is known as Egypt now, and it included what is called now the Sudan, Ethiopia, Kenya, Tanzania, Zambia, and down into Southern Africa. The kingdom expanded that far. And during the period of the Kushite kingdom, what was brought into being was a desire to understand the nature of the world order, meaning that the Africans, the Kushites, taught in their schools, their universities, the understandings of mathematics, the understandings of actually gravity and scientific, there are various scientific discoveries. And when we talk about the discoveries, the main thing that they were concentrated on was love and kindness. Their focus was to keep the peace and to maintain justice for all. This is the concept of Ma'at. The Ma'at concept is a concept that speaks to truth and the reality of all things. And Ma'at was also represented as a goddess, meaning that Ma'at is a feminine term, a feminine concept. And out of the feminine energy of this concept, the desire is for justice to prevail. behind the scenes, meaning that justice never fails in the spiritual realm or in our spiritual, in the spiritual realm, period, I should say. Right now, what we are seeking is the same thing that has been sought since the inception of the Kushite kingdom, and that is justice for everyone. And this adage about what is it? Love and kindness begins at home. That's the same thing with justice, truth, and reality. If you don't have it for the people in your midst, if you don't desire it for the people in your midst, then you cannot expect to expand it to other people or for anyone to buy into your concept. You've heard us talk about Mayat quite frequently, and George mentions quite frequently the 42 Principles of Mayat. And the 42 Principles of Mayat was written on something called the Shabaka stone. But not only that, the Kushites also had on the back of the Shabaka stone the desires for balance in the earth and how they sought to attain that. Now, when we talk about the 42 principles of Mayat, it's no different than us talking about the 10 Commandments. The only difference is that the Kushite kingdom required everyone in the kingdom to read these 42 principles twice a day, to making sure that they were always reminded of how they were to present themselves to each other and how to stay in balance with the universe. And they were so in tune with this until one of the primary methods of healing was the music. That was music, and the music was in balance with the universe, or on the same frequency of the universe. And there were many times that they were able to bring healing to people simply by music, because the music was vibrating at the same frequency of the universe. And when the body embraced the music, the vibration of the body became one with that music as one with the universe, and that resulted in healing. The aspect of Mayat also speaks to the well-being of people, period. And that is, what is his name? Imhotep. Is that it?
Imhotep.
Imhotep.
Yeah, Imhotep discovered and found healing for 200 plus diseases just in the abdomen alone. And he's truly known as the father of medicine, but he was also an engineer. So when we talk about the principles of Mayat, we're talking about all of this. And one of the major things that we are talking about that involves the Kushite kingdom is engineering itself.
Pastor,
Yes.
I hate to interrupt you, but before you get too far, you mentioned the music for healing. Do you know what frequency that was? Or is that
the same frequency of the universe? And we have talked about that frequency. Anyone of you with that frequency? I don't know offhand, but I'm sure somebody will research it. But it's the same frequency of the universe, and the focus of the focal point of reading twice a day the 42 principles was because it was to remind you of not only the balance, but it kept you in rhythm with the universe. So, and those principles are very easily obtained simply by Googling it. I was talking about the engineering. One of the major feats that has taken place, not the pyramids, it was even more amazing than that. What was his name? Menes, one of the pharaohs of Kush. What happened is when the Kushite kingdom moved up into the location that's now Egypt, there was nothing there. Egypt was not a geographical location at all, and the king of the Kushites decided that he was going to centralize all of the spirituality, all of the spiritual understandings, everything about the universe, science, mathematics, all of this was going to be centered in this place that is now called Egypt. And what he did, he saw a spot where he wanted to center everything. And what happened is he moved sand, and he redirected the Nile River, the Hopi River. He redirected it so as to create a hill right in the bend of the river, and he called it Memphis. It's called today rather Memphis. And that city-state that he was developing was not a country. It was a city-state, and it was not named Egypt. It was Haiku Ptah. And Haiku Ptah means the hill of Ptah, which means that it was the hill of God. Ptah is equivalent to our creator. Ptah is equivalent to Ein Sof. So this was the center place of Ein Sof and of Ptah. Now, in doing this, in this area were created universities as well as secondary schools and huge libraries. And in the library, the lessons were on stones, and that's what the high priest taught from. So the civilization that's attributed to Egypt today was actually the civilization that was established by Kushites. Now, how did we get to the place where we are now? Before I get there, please understand that to this day, engineers do not understand how the Kushite king was able to redirect the Nile, and he did it in such a way that it will continue to flow north as it always had done. Now, when they first went into this area, the Mediterranean Sea covered parts of the outer borders, what was included in this place that's now called Egypt and the Sudan. And they don't know how he did it, but they know it was done because it's very well documented by inscriptions on the walls in excuse me, in the pyramids, as well as by the stones that's been uncovered. It's very well documented that it happened this way. Questions before I talk about how Egypt got to where it is now? Comments?
I have a question about about the 42 principles and Moses, but I think it can wait until after you talk about Egypt.
Okay. I'm glad you raised that, Audrey, at this point, because those 42 principles, 42 laws of Ma'at, they were written 5,000 plus years before the Greeks were civilized, and 5,000 years before Moses was even written about or born, according to the dates that were given for his birth.
So Moses basically took the Ten Commandments from those.
He absolutely did.
Yes.
I mean, if Moses was in Egypt, was raised in Egypt, he would have known those 42 principles, right?
Absolutely. He had to.
Mhm.
It was a requirement. George, you want to speak to that? Or you?
No, I was just reflecting on what was just being said, and this is where, we've always, looked at the Bible, in terms of, again, not just reading it literally, looking at these uh commandments, looking at these laws, but just to know that if you compare the 42 principles, Mayat or the admonitions, you'll see that a lot of, there's 8 in particular that just come straight out of the laws of Mayat or Mayat. And so as we, again, look at the importance of the hieroglyphics, or as, James was talking about, the Medu Neter, is just something that, I think we just need to be aware of and to know. And, I concur, with what both of you are saying, that to be able to go back and look at it from its origin. And I think that's the purpose of our dialogue today, is to basically look at the African theory of the origin of our continual, evolution as far as, the cosmic universe, looking at the laws that were written, by our ancestors, and looking and comparing it into what have been reading in terms of the Bible per se. So I just wanted to share those thoughts.
Thank you. Anyone else? Now, please understand something. There is so much in understanding our origin until I'm bound to miss something or get out of order in terms of talking about it, or change the sequence unknowingly. So please speak to it if you're recognizing that. And if you have anything to add or question, please do so.
There's one thing I found with rhythms of the universe, although there's a tone, and I think it's the Om tone.
Yes.
That is the tone, the musical tone of the universe. But the other thing I found is the rhythm of the universe includes the back and forth. We talked about the motion and the rest, if you will, the back and forth of the cyclical origin of things in the universe, the ebb and flow of the ocean and the seas. All of those are symbolic and tied directly into universal rhythms. The moon waxing and waning and going through its cycles, even breathing in and out. And that's why meditation is so important to sort of ground us in the rhythm of the universe, because just the very basics of breathing in and breathing out is related to motion and rest. And so these are things we miss so often because we're so distracted by stuff. And so that's why meditation is one of the things that centers us and hopefully brings us back in line. Walking in nature, those kinds of things are the things that center us on the universal rhythms. Thanks.
Thank you.
And Barbara, as you had mentioned, when we talked about the frequency of the universe, it's 432 hertz. That's the frequency of the universe, which arouses the feeling of harmony. And there's, several, frequencies that, we can look at, that was written by the solfeggios, but the universal frequency is 432 hertz.
Thank you. Again, I do believe that the reason we have been chosen to do this, is because we must harness the energy of the beginning in order for us to bring harmony to humanity. And I do believe that this gateway that we are traveling, or this journey we're on, has brought us to a place to see in action something that we have been seeking for quite some time, and that is manifested balance, manifested harmony. Any other questions or comments? When we talk about the damage that has been done to the African through the slave trade, the damage started long before the slave trade, and the transatlantic slave trade affected us, but it was not the beginning of the slave trade. Actually, Portugal received the blessings of the priests to start to engage in slavery transportation. But anyway, Egypt became known as Egypt because the Greeks could not pronounce Haku-Ptah, and they corrupted the words of Haku-Ptah, and they called it some other word. Then it morphed into Egypt. So what was the change there? What is it that brought this Kushite kingdom pretty much to a standstill? Well, over the centuries, things began to happen differently than they did in the beginning of humanity. Let me begin with this. 40,000 years ago, Africans went into Europe. And when the Africans went into Europe 40,000 years ago, actually prior to that, there were no Europeans, period. And through the mutation of genes, the European came into existence. And 8,500 years ago, that's when Europeans or Caucasians became a recognizable group of people. And within their midst were people who were obviously of African descent, but the bone structure began to change because of the genetic changes that were taking place during that period. Now, when we look at what happened in Egypt and why it is the way it is today, it is because Europeans invaded Asia, Northern Asia. And when Europeans invaded Northern Asia, they occupied Asia. And they began to create a group of people that in the future would be known as Semites. And I'll tell you about that in a few moments. And what happened is, after the invasion of Northern Asia, the Indo-Europeans and the Eurasians invaded Egypt, that area that's now called Egypt. And they began to slaughter the people in Egypt. It was a tremendous war that took place for years. And they finally conquered northern Egypt and pushed the Kushites down to southern Egypt and below the first cataract, which is a waterway. And what happened when they took the throne, they meaning the invaders, when they took the throne, the people who were of Euro-Asian descent began to interact with Africans and marry, rape, however, all of this took place. And out of that came the people who are currently occupying Egypt as Egyptians. And from this introduction of these three groups of people to Northern Africa. That's where we end up getting the Arabs and the Persians. The Arabs and the Persians are Africans with Asians with Europeans, and that began. That's where the change started, and because and when the Greeks came into that area, because they didn't know any better, they thought that Egypt itself was a country, and that's how they began to treat it, even though the people who were in Egypt knew that it was a city-state. And the Cushites, who had been pushed south by then, refused to be moved any further. And the Cushites then was led by a king, a female who was king, and she was able to stave off the invasions. And the reason that Egypt is what it is today, in terms of the people who occupy it, who will argue with you that they're not Africans, is because they really aren't. And what they called them was Semites. And the reason they called them Semites, the word, if you look at the etymology of the word Semite or Semitic, it comes from Semi, the same word that we use for mixed race. That's what Semite means. So when we talk about Semites, we're talking about people of mixed race, and that's how we get to that conclusion. Now, the reason that the people who occupy Israel now, which is actually Egypt, a portion of Egypt anyway, the reason they occupy it now is because they claim to be the quote unquote original Jews, whatever that is. I've not understood what that means yet. The only reason they do that is because the only portion of the Bible that they were introduced to during that period of time was the Old Testament, the teachings of the Old Testament. And if you notice, if you look at the map, what you will see is that Eastern Europe butts up against North Asia, and that mixed race, or that or the races mixing became Semites. So that's why they call themselves Semites. And the whole concept of saying that you are anti-Semite is saying that you're anti-mixed race, which is really crazy. It has nothing to do with a national origin as much as it has to do with three groups of people intermarrying with each other and bringing into existence a culture rather of three different groups: the African culture, the European, as well as Asian. And during this period, that is when the whole idea of the Mayat principles began to wane, and the kingdom of the Cushites began to fall apart. And this in itself brought to an end the deepest desires of the Cushites, and that was to maintain and create balance throughout the earth. And that balance was what was represented by an area that is now in parts in the Sudan, where pyramids are right side up like we know them to be, but there are also a number of pyramids that's upside down. And there are no bodies in those pyramids. And the reason they were structured in that manner is because the Cushite truly believed that as above, so is below. And that was a physical representation of that belief, with the ones who were exiting their bodies and the bodies being mummified and placed in pyramids with the point at the top. And the spiritual essence of the energy of femininity being in the pyramids that were upside down. So this idea of as above, so is below has been a part of our culture since day one. We asked the question, why are we the most spiritual people on the face of the earth? It's because we have a connection to spirituality and always had it from the beginning by virtue of being the first humans to occupy this celestial ball called Earth. And the same energy that was in the first people who were called Twa is the same energy that is in us today. And our desire for balance is simply a continuation of what the Kushite kingdom was all about in terms of bringing balance to the entire earth and bringing humanity, keeping humanity in rhythm with the universe itself. Any questions about that before we continue to talk to our side head towards Central Africa? So what happened?
You don't,
Go ahead.
just a question. The word,
You break it up, Ron.
you're saying that, oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I just thought it was interesting, the word Semitic, how you defined it and what you said. I think that's very significant of what we're seeing now. What it says is how it's used, and the people that call themselves that really don't exist as they see themselves in the earth. I just think that was very significant to look at the real definition of what the word means, and the power that that word has today when it's really being used falsely.
And what you did term as the power of that word, because it's being used in a violent way, because that's all it is. It creates violence against people who don't look like those who are always tossing it around. What we are seeing today is that word losing its power. And along with the power of that word being lost would be the power of the people who wrap themselves in that term, Semite or anti-Semitic. It no longer has the effect that it once did. And if you have been following what's taking place in that portion of the world, what you will see is the demise of the power in that word by virtue of the U.S. being pressured to take into consideration the humanity of the Palestinians as the humanity of the Eastern Europeans are taken into consideration. And by the way, Palestinians are also deemed to be Semitic because they came from the same group of people that I mentioned earlier, Asians, Europeans, and Africans. And that is the reason when you look at your Palestinians, you will see heavy features of Africans as well as features of Europeans/Asians. The genes are unmistakable when you begin to understand how this group of people was brought into existence. Any questions or comments?
It's just that it's like we're fighting ourselves. It's what they're doing. They're fighting. We all who hate each other and dislike each other are really fighting ourselves, our very own self. And so it's schizophrenic. We see two different. It's like being imbalanced, out of balance, and not aligning yourselves together like the masculine and feminine. That's what this is all about. Those basic principles.
The word sin in the Kushite kingdom meant to be out of balance with the universe and yourself. So what you're saying is spot on. We are indeed fighting against ourselves. And honestly, regardless of what happened to our ancestors and what's happening to us now, we still don't have a right to deviate from those 42 principles of Maya. We don't have the right to do that. And we have an obligation to seek justice and harmony for everyone, for all of humanity. We cannot hate, or we cannot be dismissive of people simply because of the way they have treated us. And be honest with you, the way they treated us has a lot to do with how we are treating ourselves. When we embrace the principles of the Kushites, that is when we began to see that we are indeed God. We are Elohim, Al-Kabalan. We are Elohim, and that is the belief, and that was the primary reason for the teachers in the Kushite kingdom. A prophet is simply an excellent historian. A prophet is one who understands the past and the present, and looks to the future based upon the experiences of the past and present. We have been fighting against each other, but yet we've been fighting against ourselves, as Barbara stated. And in a more real way, we've been fighting against ourselves by virtue of hating. We've been fighting against ourselves because we didn't know who we were. And we would never know who we were if we were going to simply determine who we are based upon the history that we have been given, as opposed to the reality of what history is in regards to us and our existence. There was this European archaeologist went into Africa for the first time. And when he went into Africa, he marveled at the ignorance of Europeans, and he himself being a European. And that ignorance that he marveled after was the high level of culture and governance that he found in Africa, and the scientific accomplishments. And he found proof of the origin of mathematics and everything that is being in Africa. And the reason he marveled at it is because he said, and we have the audacity to enslave these people and treat them as being inferior to us. And his conclusion was, we are the inferior ones. And he based that upon the attitudes that were being directed toward the African, as opposed to the attitude that the African directed toward Europeans. Those were his words, not mine. However, if we are to truly understand who we are have an obligation to look at more deeply, rather, into the things that we are talking about, because it is virtually impossible to bring all of our understandings of our history to the table on 1 day, 2 days, or 3 days for that matter. Before we leave Egypt, is there a question?
Do you recall who that anthropologist is?
I have it noted someplace. I'll find it. Okay. If I'm not mistaken, it's in Spirituality Before Religion. It's in there. Any other questions?
Are you familiar with this idea of the Hebrews, Black Hebrews in West Africa? Not,
I understand what you're saying. That's where I'm headed.
okay. All right.
What happened is when Egypt was overran by the Romans, when Alexander pillaged Egypt and burned books and committed genocide, not only to those who look like the Egyptians today, but especially to those of African heritage, pure African heritage. And I use that word pure very loosely, simply for understanding purposes. The groups of Africans who were being pushed deeper and deeper down the coast and being murdered actually began to move. They began to migrate towards the interior of Africa. And as they migrated towards the interior of Africa, they took with them their beliefs. And what Audrey is referencing is the Hebrews who still practice what is considered Judaism, but it really isn't. What is considered Judaism in the Congo, well, in Central Africa, as well as in West Africa. What happened is the larger group who migrated from East Africa to Central Africa stopped in the areas of the Congo and Nigeria, those spaces. And to this day, there are people in those areas who practice their spiritual beliefs in the same manner that the Kushites did in the kingdom of the Kushites. And as they press westward, they also established kingdoms that we became familiar with, like in Mali, Ghana, Timbuktu libraries, all these things they brought with them from East Africa. So when Audrey mentions the familiarity with the Hebrews in that area, that's where they originated from. There was what is now the Sahara Desert was once a river. And that river was a source of travel that allowed Africans to navigate to all parts of Africa. And during a period of intense heat, the river dried up. And now it is known as Sahara. And we talk about being south of the Sahara Desert. There was no mention of that or no understanding of what that was, because it wasn't a desert during the period of the migration. And even to this day, the native Africans do not divide the continent by sub-Saharan, stand sub-Saharan. They do not do that. That's a division that was created by the Europeans. And the areas that we are naming and talking about now, whether it be Nigeria or the Congo or Chad, or whether it is Mauritania, it doesn't matter. All of these areas were divvied up between the Europeans. And King Leopold from Belgium was one of the major players in the restructure, in the division of Africa. They divided Africa amongst themselves, and what they did purposely. There were different groups of people who farmed their land and who had actually established cities and nations. What they did when they carved it up, they purposely drew those boundaries across lines that were inhabited by different groups of people who spoke different languages for the express purpose of creating chaos. And that's exactly what happened. And during this chaos that was created, the Catholic Church, as well as the Protestant churches, especially the Catholic Church, sent into those areas. And we talk about a period long after the migrations, sent into those areas people to quote unquote Christianize the inhabitants, and their names were changed. If your name was Kwame, you were told that that was a pagan name, and you know your name needed to be Christianized, and your name became John. And then by the time you understood that you were not John, you were Kwame, they had stole everything that was there, and that chaos was created for the purpose of taking control of all of the wealth of Africa. And this is the funny thing about it. Europeans didn't even know what gold was until they went into what is now Northern Africa, and they saw the royalty who wore gold. They saw the gold ornaments that people were using, and they valued them because of the royalty that who was using them in Africa, and that is what caused them to seek to control the production of the gold mines and everything else. And as we move forward to other to where we are, we find that all of the materials that has been used for inventions comes out of Africa, the only continent on Earth where everything exists in terms of minerals is Africa. The only other place where all the minerals exist is the universe. And that in itself speaks volume. So Audrey, I think I answered your question, did I?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
So they migrated from East and Central Africa down into West Africa.
Yes. And that's how the kingdoms in West Africa came into existence. And the way they came into existence is simply because these people had the knowledge to do this in their DNA. And when they left where they were, forcibly, of course, they had the knowledge to do this. And when we talk about people like Mansa Musa and the Mali Kingdom, they knew how to govern a kingdom, because that's what they had come from. And when we study the kingdoms of the Kushite, whether they be on the East Coast or in the Central Africa or the West Coast of Africa, what we find is that no one in the kingdoms were poor. In other words, there was no poverty. The purpose of the king was twofold. One, to make sure all physical needs of his people were taken care of, but more importantly, to make sure that all of the people understood that they were gods, understood the spiritual essence of who they are, understood that they are they were the initial people, humans on this earth, and as that we are caretakers of the earth. When the Creator says, dominate the earth, that came from Cush, long before the Hebrews even thought about any of that. That came from Cush. The virgin birth is inscribed in the tombs in Egypt. That came, the idea of the virgin birth came from Cush. All of these stories that we that we read and that we are beginning to understand came from Cush. All of it. Everything in that book you can find in the Memphite theology. So when we were talking about the nation that was born on the waters, and we were talking about how the nation that was born on the waters is the nation that understands the scriptures more than anyone else, inclusive of those who still occupy Cabelon. We are the ones who understand it because we are the ones who are obligated to throw off the shackles of anger and hate, to throw off the shackles of rage and racism, to throw off the shackles of inferiority, and bring order and balance to the earth, period, to the whole of humanity. That's our responsibility. We don't have a choice in the matter. And that is the reason we have been disciplined over the years. And now that that discipline is here, what do? What are we being shown? We are being shown things now that we never knew existed in terms of understanding the scriptures. And when I talk about understanding the scriptures, I'm talking about understanding the order of things, understanding the order of the universe, understanding the order of the earth. If we cannot understand the order of the earth, we will never understand the order of the universe. Because if we can't understand earthly things, how can we understand spiritual things? If we do not understand the relationship between this material world and the universe itself, then we don't understand ourselves, because we are one with both. We are the pyramid that's turned upside down, and we are the pyramid that's right side up. We are as above, so is below. That's our obligation. And the idea of being as above, so is below is not just a spiritual thing, it's also historical. And without understanding the history of it, we will not be able to understand the spiritual nature of it. So here we are being told that we don't, excuse me, that we are disjointed from each other, and we buy into that. There is no such thing as Africans in the diaspora. That the Africans in the diaspora is something that was used to separate us and to keep us looking suspiciously at each other. Where the ones in the Americas doing better than the ones in the Caribbean. The ones in the Caribbean are doing better than the ones who are on the continent of Africa. What is that saying? We're talking about materialism. We're not talking about spiritualism. That is the purpose of Pan-Africanism. The purpose of Pan-Africanism says that we are not in the diaspora. It is impossible to separate an African from African. It's impossible because of the energy that all of us possess. It is as difficult to separate Africans from each other as it is to separate an Italian from Italy. No one talks about Europeans in the diaspora. No one. The only people who are spoken of in the diaspora are us. And that is purposely done to drive a wedge between all of us. And that is not done haphazardly, and that is not done simply because of racism. That is done because as long as you keep a people blind, you can steal them blind. You can steal everything they got, including their self-worth. And that's what's taking place. And we are turning that around. When you see people who are able to murder tens of thousands of people without blinking, and you look at the same thing when it happens in Russia with the Russians, it's a terrorist attack. When it happened with Israel, it's retribution. We have to see it for what it is. So when we look at Africa, when we look at the kingdom of the Cushites, when we look at the shoulders upon which it was built on the shoulders of the Torah, the original inhabitants of the earth. The original inhabitants of the earth are not, we cannot say that the original people are no. We are the original inhabitants, humans on the earth. That's who we are. There were no other humans on any part of the earth except where we were. Where we came from that cosmic womb. And how we were brought from that cosmic womb, you can look at the Memphite theology and begin to see that the same creation story that we read about in Genesis, that creation story is explained in greater detail in the Memphite theology than it is when we look at it in Genesis. So if that is the origin of it, then there has to be merit to it that supersedes the merit that we see in Genesis, because Genesis gives us an overview. The Cushites looked at it differently than that. The Cushites saw the creation as being the chaos hovering over the waters, just like it says that and darkness covered the deep. When we talk about this, the hovering of the Spirit over the water, that came from the Cushites, because they talked about the chaos, and then it talks about chaos meets desire. And when chaos met desire, order came into being. And the order that came into being was the vegetation of the earth, the plants, the animals, etc. And the human came from Netanun, which is the waters of life, or the waters of creation. And out of Netanun not only came the human, but it also speaks about that being the origin of Haru, or Jesus, when we look at it from the scriptures that were brought out of Egypt. Both of them have the same origin, and both of them died the same way. So what I'm saying is this: we are not just the writers of the scriptures. We are the originators of them. It is from the depths of our soul that these messages were chiseled on stones. Think about that. 5,000 years before Moses, the Shabaka stone was chiseled. And in that stone were what we are talking about. And in the temples on the walls, chiseled into the walls, is what we are talking about. You can find the whole of the scriptures inside the pyramids and the temples, as well as on the stones that were chiseled. The stone of Shabaka now that's in, the reason it's called the Shabaka stone is because the original stone that the Cushites chiseled as a spiritual source of teaching was destroyed. It had holes in it because they were using it for grinding. And when I say they, I'm talking about the invaders. And then what happened 700 years after the original stone, King Shabaka had a slab of bauxite chiseled with the same messages that was on the original stone. And out of that, we have what we call today the holy books. And the intriguing thing about that is that we have the holy books, but the ones who call them holy books and hold on to them don't understand it. They held on to them because they could manipulate them. And the ones they could not manipulate, they hid them from us. And the hiding place for these very stones that we are talking about is the Vatican, as well as the European museums, especially the museums in Britain or in England. So there is no, it is no mistake that we are, our deepest desire is no mistake that our deepest desire is to bring to humanity an understanding of what is deemed to be the Holy Book. And holy has nothing to do with God as we say it is. It's talking about a group of books that have been separated for an express purpose. And the express purpose of these books having been separated is for spiritual teachings. Education from the beginning had nothing to do with employment. Education from the beginning had everything to do with teaching you who you are. And the teachers education, education, the things that education was to focus on was the spiritual essence, the spiritual nature of everything that exists. That's what teaching was all about. Had nothing to do with the job at all. And the whole idea of when it talks about the Egyptians worshiping animals, that's totally wrong. The current Egyptians worship nothing. As a matter of fact, they discouraged everything that the Cushites left in terms of practice. The reason that these animals like eagles and lions, they were used to depict the strength, the attributes of our Creator, the attributes of Atum, the attributes of the one who created everything that is. And it is no different than you in America, the mascot and the animal is an eagle. That doesn't mean that America worship eagles. It simply means that it represents how it sees itself. And that's exactly what was happening in the teachings of the Cushites. So the teachings of the Cushite using these images as a teaching method still exists today. And we still talk about, we use lions to depict courage. We use eagles to depict sight or superior sight or spiritual sight. We use all of these animals, but it doesn't mean that we are worshiping them. How in the world could the first people on earth, how in the world could the people on this earth who instigated the idea of spirituality, who lived it, ate it, who slept, everything they did was centered around it. How in the world could they be accused of worshiping animals? Simply because a group of people who were ignorant of their ways found these images and did not understand them. And if these images were so demonic, then why is it that they are still on cathedrals in Europe? They are still housed in the inside of cathedrals. How is it that you can have a picture of Jesus on the wall and you're not worshiping that picture of Jesus? Why is it that you believe that these animals are being worshiped? Simply because they represent or the attributes that one sees in itself, and what it sees in itself is the one who created them. And as the Cushite says in their writings, it speaks to the whole concept of realizing that you are divine, realizing that you are Elohim. And I do believe that because we have embraced the reality and the essence of who we are in terms of Elohim, we are being introduced now to the origin of it all. And out of all this stuff that I have read over the years, what is being now condensed into these discussions. All of the stuff that you guys have read over the years is now being condensed, because it is not necessary for every every nuance. I'm sorry, every piece of how the Kushites thought, how they function. It is not necessary for all the pieces in order for us to put this in the universe, in the macro. And the energy of it is what's important. And understand something. There is no way that we would ever have seen what we see if it had not been for our desire to embrace feminine energy and to do everything to repair it and understand the importance, the essence of it. We would never have seen this, because without embracing feminine energy, you cannot birth anything. And that is evident. In 1871, the first law against wife beating was passed. It was legal to beat your wife in every state in this country until 1920. And even when those laws were passed across the country in 1920, they were not even enforced. And especially in South Carolina, because females who represent feminine energy was treated as chattel property. And you could do anything you wanted with your property. We had to turn that around. We had to correct that. And we have corrected it to the extent that we see the leadership of the female, the feminine energy. We embrace what's being birthed into the earth today because of our embracing the womb of everything that came into existence, the womb of all of humanity. If we don't embrace femininity, we are not embracing our origin. And if we don't embrace our origin, it is impossible for us to embrace the reality that we are Elohim. I didn't mean to talk that long. Questions, comments?
Yeah, good morning, Pastor. There's a lot, that you have shared, and I just wanted to mention with regards to the Shabaka stone. Again, it's basically a cosmic roadmap that follows nature's way. And when we look at American history, which we come to know and appreciate, I think even diving more esoterically in terms of African history, I have come to realize that it is not hidden, but it's carved on the Shabaka stone. And so when we talk about a picture is 1,000 words or a symbol is 1,000 pictures, I think to be able to take the time to digest the significance of our ancestors and the importance of having some understanding of the Shabaka stone. And I won't just necessarily go into detail, but basically the Shabaka stone consists of 4 parts. It deals with its historical statements and its 3 philosophies. But if we look at the stone, which is basically in the British Museum today, it's 498, and you're able to see that with regards to the significance of the hieroglyphics. And that's the sacred scripts that they speak about. But basically, for the most part, if one should have the opportunity to look at that, you can again just see just how gifted our ancestors and we are with regards to how it was all written. If you look at the Shabaka stone, it's like the Old Testament of the Bible. Everything that's in the Old Testament or in the holy books is actually, carved in that particular Shabbat, in that stone. And what made me think about this was when I was reading in the Bible in terms of Psalms 118. And again, I'm just kind of elaborating on just my thoughts. It talked about the stone which the builders refused is become the headstone of the corner. And again, in terms of it breaking it down even the more esoteric, Pastor, what does that mean? But I think that all that was written you know what I mean, going back to our earliest point of origin, you know, is that in which the Twa was able to appreciate in their journey. And so this is where, again, when we talk about the principle of polarity and we talk about Mayat, but we also can talk about Tahuti. And when we begin to realize the masculine and the feminine, or the seed in the womb, you know, I think that this is just something that we need to have a better understanding, because the words that you shared earlier about Mayat, you know, and its netra or its principles, it talks about the importance of truth. It talks about the importance of justice. It talks about the importance of balance. And this is what we had talked about earlier, and morality, order, harmony, righteousness, and reciprocity. You know what I mean? And so I think as we, again, to reflect, as you say, as so above, so below, this is how our ancestors were able to appreciate their journey, because they were basically taught by nature. And so the deepest thoughts of our ancestors, or the Twas, was their most original thought was the concept of existence before the beginning began. And so when we talk about in Genesis, in the beginning, you know, what existed before the beginning? And I think this is the spiritual aspect in terms of who we all are connected to. So again, these particular, the particular discussion today is very enlightening to me, because again, to be able to know the truth, or to be able to look at our origins as the Earth's first humanity, which was Twas, it makes us realize how things evolved over a period of time. And while I have the opportunity, I just want to share that the first, or the 6 levels of early development, when you talk about the Twa people, okay, you know, they were the hunter-gatherer societies. And this was like 144,000 years, you know, ago, where they were able to, again, create the agricultural democracies, which was the second level of around that 18,000, you know, before the Common Era. But over that period of time, they created the civilization of the Nubia, you know, the Kush and Kemet. And that was the world's largest, you know what I mean, civilization in terms of the Twa and the Anu people. But just looking at it in terms of its origin, everything came out of, you know, Central and South Africa in terms of the Twa. But again, they were the oldest people, I mean, that was found in Europe, was the Twa. And then you had the first people in America, the Paleo-Americans, who are the Anu, but that again preceded the Native Americans. And as that journey goes on, then we talk about, again, the importance of being able to understand, you know, our history, or just being able to see it from the perspective of the Shabaka stone. And so again, as I say before, the first 2 lines dealt with but you also had the 62 vertical columns in which there's information that's written, information that you can, you know, see. And so it just made me really just think about, I think that episode that Richard Pryor was in, when he went into the caves with the anthropologists. And as he began to look around and begin to see the symbols, the sacred symbols, you know, he realized that this is who I am. So I appreciate, you know, just being able to share those thoughts. But like I said, it's just, you know, the journey that we're on, journey that I'm personally on, and I really appreciate the conversation that we're having. But again, I just wanted to share those thoughts. But you gave us the book you gave us the book some years ago, Pastor, in terms of Dr. George James, G.W. James, about the Memphite theology and how it relates to what you just mentioned, the primary source, which was the Memphite theology, and then the secondary source that was King Shabaka, and how King Shabaka during that time of 710, I guess before the Common Era, that he rewrote it, because it was originally written on leather, And I think that he transcribed it or, put it onto stone. So I just wanted to share those thoughts. Thank you guys. Share those things. I'm done.
Thank you for the insight in terms of the Torah. I know that there are those of you who are on who can bring much needed depth to our understanding, and what you just presented to us did just that. There is something that's written, and you've heard others say, "Man, know thyself." That has nothing to do with knowing your personality. When the Cushite wrote that or chiseled that in stone, they were not talking about knowing your vocation or knowing your attitude. They were talking about knowing that you were divine. They were talking about, man, know who you are. So when you hear those words, man, know thyself, it's not talking about what we would think it's talking about. But it's talking about the spiritual essence of our being, because there is a reason that there are no Hebraic, there are no Aramaic, there are no words in the original languages of the African that speaks to a dead body. The original languages, a live body, rather, a living body. There are no words for that. The only words for that is dead body, because the body is dead. Only you are alive. And if we can wrap our mind around that, then we are more than halfway of understanding the reality of our purpose in this earth. Our purpose is not to harm. Our purpose is to heal. And the distractions that we are encounter are simply that, distractions. We don't have to embrace the distractions. However, we are obligated to identify them and speak the truth wherever we have opportunity to do that, without regard to someone's hurt feelings. Because if the truth hurts your feelings, then you need to ask yourself, why are your feelings hurt? Because you're hearing the truth. Why is it easier for men to hear about the enslavement of us and distress over our talking about the origin of us? Why is that such an issue? When we talk about living outside of the knowledge of Elohim, we are talking about living with the knowledge that you think you are superior to Elohim, or that you are Elohim and superior to everyone else on this earth. There are no superior people on this earth. There are people, period. The Cushites believed that the obligation to mankind, to everyone, was to teach them and grow them. George talked about the Torah, that they were the first people to form a society, period. And and he mentioned something I think went by us, the democracy, the agrarian democracy that they formed. It was a true democracy, and not this thing that we have labeled a democracy, knowing that it isn't one. I'm done. Questions, comments?
I just wanted to add to a little bit to that. I've told you all about this book that I've read called The African Genius.
Yes.
Anyway, it talks about in there, in terms of the kingdom of Great Zimbabwe, how they, when you were talking about the use of animals, well, they use the eagle to represent God, but they weren't worshiping the eagle. It was just an aspect of the creator because they recognized that everything is divine. And then when the Europeans came along and saw these representations of the eagle in their place where they worship, they destroyed them all. In their arrogance, I guess, the Europeans thought they were superstitious, but the Africans themselves recognize that that is an aspect of the creator. The environment is an aspect of the creator. And when you're talking about your own well-being, you have to be concerned about the environment also. Because if the eagles aren't doing well, then you're probably not doing well either, because they are part of the environment. If we're doing things to the environment that's causing them harm, then you're probably causing yourself harm. So they recognize that everything is a part of creation and everything is divine. So they had a mindset of taking care of recognizing that, and also taking care, especially of the environment. And so they had a definite relationship to the environment and a system of taking care of it. Anyway.
Any questions or comments?
Pastor, I have a question, but it's not about what Audrey just said. I wanted you to go back, if you will, to what you said, that there was no reference to the living body. Is that what you said?
Dead bodies, a living body, yes, yes.
Okay. I wanted you to clear that up for me too. And looking at the Proverbs, the African Proverbs, one of them says, you are your ancestors, and you only have one ancestor, the creator. That triggered those two thoughts when you said that. Does that tie into no reference to a living body?
Would you
Or
repeat,
am I off track on seeing it that way?
repeat the second part again?
The first one says you are your ancestors.
Right.
And then the other one says you only have one ancestor, the creator. And these are proverbs, African proverbs. So how does that compare to not making reference to a living body?
It is not talking about you being your body, having an ancestor. It's talking about you, the spiritual essence of who you are. This body is simply a part of this earth in terms of the minerals that's on this earth, coupled with the water. But it's not talking about a living body, because a living body doesn't exist.
And having only one ancestor, does that speak to the unicity and oneness of all that we are, instead of looking to ancestors, saying that the creator is the one ancestor?
The creator is the one
Explain that
ancestor.
for me, please.
The creator is the one ancestor of all.
Mm-hmm.
And all of us are, in terms of being Elohim, are ancestors to everyone. When we leave these bodies, we become ancestors. because we are in the spiritual realm. The Kushite talked about everything came from Nether Noon, and everything remains in Nether Noon, and we will go back to Nether Noon and that is the afterlife, which means that everything came from the same same waters of creation, and everything remains in that space, and everything will go back to that space as well, which means that we are a spirit living in these bodies, and we will return to our spiritual essence in totality when we exit these bodies. The reason we are here is to bring balance so that we can live in both worlds. As above, so as below, is what was experienced by the allegory about Jesus' resurrection and everyone seeing him and him being able to leave on his own terms. Does that make sense?
It does. Yes.
Nick, did I see you? Most of that. Do you have something to say concerning this or something else?
Oh, no,
Okay,
unless anyone has a direct question.
go ahead.
I have a question about the ancestors again, because I'm confused. When we talk about ancestors being with us, or the cloud of witnesses, which is the ancestors, I think, and I may need clarity on that. I don't understand that there isn't any ancestors. I'm just confused. Can you help me understand what you're saying?
I can help with that if you like.
Right.
So, a couple of things. There's a sort of think of it like a reservoir of resonance that we have the ability to draw from, which in part, I believe, includes the sort of collected experiences of our ancestors and the accumulated wisdom, etc., that exists for us to connect to. And now that I believe exists as kind of like like a reservoir, and it's not necessarily distinguished into individual people in terms of contacting our ancestors, quote unquote. Now that exists simultaneously with the ability to perhaps that's the best way to describe it, to contact individual people, either unconsciously, subconsciously, or fully consciously. But it's the interplay, I think, between those two phenomena, the sort of reservoir of available wisdom and accumulated experience and energy, as well as the individual or sort of group consciousnesses that are still interacting with us here in the physical material experience. And it's both of those things that we have access to, and both of those things that can influence our choices. And it's kind of sort of difficult to say what specifically people can be referring to when they say they are in contact with ancestors, or they are, talking about ancestors in general. But metaphysically, there's a range of things that it could be, but it represents the sort of totality of what we have access to. So I hope that helps.
Evelyn?
I'm processing. So you said there's only one ancestor. So and does that, are you saying that
Well, here
the people the energy that we're tapping into when we talk about ancestors, that's us, that's that oneness? And that's a question.
Okay. Let me take a stab at it also, see if we can bring this to a point of clarity. First of all, I don't believe that ancestors, or those who have exited the bodies, actually care about seeing us physically. They see us for who we are, and that is spiritual Elohim. If you really think about it, why would those who have transitioned before us want to look at what we are doing in this physical world. And I think that we should be pretty happy that they are not seeing us in our actions in this physical world, but they see us as who we are, spirit. Now, when it talks about one ancestor, it's speaking about our creator. That one ancestor is ancestor to every human on this earth. That proverb does not negate the reality that those who have come before us are our ancestors. The unicity of that is this: I am you and you are me. If I say that I am you and you are me, then why is it that when I look at the screen, I don't see me in every face on the screen? It's because I am you and you are me is speaking about the spiritual essence of who we are. It is not talking about a physical presence. So when we talk about the ancestor, we are talking about the spiritual essence of those who have gone on before us. We're talking about the spiritual essence being one with the entity that brought us into existence. It is impossible for us to be Elohim and to be physical, but it is not impossible for us to be Elohim and live in this body. It is impossible for us to exit this body and not return to where we came from. Meaning, return does not mean travel. Return means the essence becomes aware of who it was, is, and shall be. Does that make sense?
It does. And I think I shared this before with the family that when my mom transitioned, I was crying, and she said to me, "Why are you crying? You're me. So why are you crying?" So is that basically the same? Is that also the same thing? No?
You know, I say you broke up while you were speaking.
Oh, you want me to repeat what I was saying?
Yes, ma'am.
I said, when my mom transitioned, I was crying, and I heard her say, "Why are you crying? You are me, and I am you. So why are you crying?" And I stopped crying because I felt what she was saying. So is that basically the same thing, the oneness?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
See, well, we don't receive messages, and help me with this, somebody. I'm not preaching. We don't receive messages outside of our realm of understanding. If you did not understand me being you and you being me, that would not have been said to you. When we receive messages, we receive them within the confines of our understanding, based on what we understand, as opposed to things that we have to decipher. The other thing is this: if the acknowledgement of the energy of our ancestors being present with us is a superstition or pagan, then I beg to, I want to ask this question in regards to that. Why is it that the foundation of everything that calls itself religion came from the same foundation? Meaning, if spirituality had its origin with the Twa in Kabbalah, then why is it that we embrace the idea of being pagan or of being superstitious or denigrating the reality of the presence of our ancestors, when that has been prevalent from day one? Why is it that we have embraced something different than that? Does that make sense? We have embraced the ancestor. When we talk about ancestors, that's ancestor worship and that's demonic. Have we not? If you've been to
Yeah.
church, I don't know about your niece. I don't know about her being at church. And Nick either, but where he been to, yeah, he had to.
I was there.
Okay. But anyway, why is that demonic? Why did we embrace that? Because we did not know who we are. That's why we were ignorant to our history. We were ignorant to being the foundation of everything that exists. We were ignorant to that. We were ignorant to the reality that everything is understood started with us. And I have on the shelf a book that says Black people created everything. And I prefer it, Africans created, invented rather, everything. And as I perused it, I cannot think of anything that's not in there. And it's documented, the invention of everything. So how could that be? We laid the foundation for the smelting of iron. We laid the foundation. I mean, my God, in the Kushite kingdom, the burial pyramids or the burial coffins, because they were not pyramids all along. Some of them were buried in coffins and made of limestone, and it melted away. But anyway, why is it that there are copper utensils in those pyramids, and why the utensils that are dated back beyond any civilization in the area dated back rather to the beginning of civilization in the area that's now known as the Sudan? Why is that? Who taught us to make copper utilities? Who taught us that? Who taught us to smelt iron? All of these things we need to rethink. What was the origin of it? Now, you may ask the question, why are we dwelling so much on the history of this, of the African? Why are we dwelling on this? Because it is not really possible to truly understand and embrace what the scriptures, if we don't understand the origin, and if we don't understand, or at the very least, search for a precursor to the scriptures. Was there anything before the scriptures? Was there any writings before the scripture? We talk about hieroglyphics, but there are 4 different writing patterns in what is called Egypt now, and the hieroglyphics were used by the teachers and the priests. And God, I should have written it down. The other 3 were used by people who were being taught, or the what was called in the writings the ordinary people. So how is it that that we simply dismiss all of the things that we see written, and yet we dismiss it because we have been convinced that they are superstitions that we're trying to hold on to. If our beliefs were not powerful, why is it that there was a concerted effort to force us to relinquish our beliefs when we came into this country? Why is it that was wanted so badly until they would kill us if they caught us practicing our beliefs? Why? It was not out of hate, it was out of fear. They knew, meaning the enslavers knew that there was power in what we were taught. They knew more than we know the essence of who we are. And now that essence is masked by what we call racism and hate. If you pull the mask back, you will see the fear. And the fear is not that we're going to kill everybody. That's not the fear. The fear is that we will exert the authority that we have in the earth, and they who are maintaining control of the earth will lose their power and their wealth. That's what the fear is. Because you're not going to tell me that they were afraid only that we were going to destroy them, when there is no history of us seeking to destroy them, meaning Europeans. There's no history of that at all. And you say, what about the people who were killed by Nat Turner and Gabriel Prosser and others? Well, that was not a campaign of genocide or extermination. That was a fight to be free. Had nothing to do with an effort to render someone extinct or a group of people extinct. Nothing to do with that at all. That is not our nature. That is not who we are. So the bottom line, I suppose, is when you read about what is written on those walls, like, for example, flying machines, you can find those engraved in the pyramids and references to that. And that's what they're called, flying machines. And you can see engraved the system, I'm sorry, the reality of heaven, of redirecting to now. How is it that that could take place during that period of time? I think it was the 25th dynasty of the Kushite kingdom where this took place. How is it that we were able to accomplish that and be inferior to anyone? If we were intellectually inferior, how is it that we accomplished those things? Now, why is it that we now are seemingly disconnected from those things? Because of indoctrination. How did we get to where we are? We did not get to where we are because someone hated us. We got to where we are because someone was greedy. And they taught themselves to hate us. We are where we are because we did not take the initiative to alter the course of humanity as the Hopi River was altered. The course was altered. We did not do that. We presented all of these principles or admonitions, but we did not teach all of this to humanity. We taught ourselves. And here we are at this space trying to figure out why is it that out of us came those who denigrate us. In order for as above, so as below, so as above, so as below. In order for that to be real, then the same things have to take place below that took place above. And when we talk about above, we're not talking about geographical locations. We are talking about we're talking about the spiritual world as well as the material world. In order for us to be in this earth realm as it is in the spiritual realm, then we have to do what it took to bring the spiritual realm into existence. The pattern for existence in the earth was laid before the human or the man was created. And then after the pattern of everything was laid, the man was created. And I mean generically man, okay? Because actually it should be woman was created because it's the man with the womb. That's where womb, a woman comes from in every language. How is it that that we are where we are? Because we bought into a system that denigrates the female as opposed to buying into the reality of who we are. So now we are in the space where we are to dominate. And that word is loaded because it has been translated wrong. Dominate does not mean to exert authority or superiority over anyone or anything. Dominate means that you are responsible for everything that happens in this place, in this earth. You are responsible for that. So if the things that are happening in this earth are outside of the parameters of the governing principles of this earth, then it is our responsibility to bring them into compliance. And bringing them into compliance is simply saying, bringing balance. It is no doubt that, my belief anyway, is no doubt that all of these things that happen on purpose. Because if they had not taken place the way they took place, then we would not be able to function as Elohim. Because in order to function as Elohim, we must be able to do what Elohim does. Elohim brought into existence. Elohim brought into existence an image and likeness of itself. Why did Elohim do that? Think about that. Why? Elohim wanted a mirror of itself. Elohim did it not simply by the spoken word. Before the word could ever be spoken, there had to be a desire for this existence. So desire is the driver of creation. Can you see that? I can see you now, so you can shake your head if you want to. If you can't, can you see that? Okay, thank you, Nick. Nick's head like a bubble. Anyway, the driving force of all of creation is desire. So when we initiated our desire to take this journey, we had no idea of the power of desire. And I do believe that we are just now beginning to see the power of desire. Desire is not something that you desire and then sit down. I desire change and then you sit and expect the desire to come into fruition. It's not, it doesn't work that way. Desire is also action. When Elohim desired an image of itself, it took action. And the action that it took was bringing into existence this entity, this being who we call Adam, and who the Cushites call Atum. That was brought into existence. And in order for the human to never forget it, it has been an allegory that has been told throughout human history in this earth. And to this day, it's still being told, but it's being told from a book that's limited to what Europeans has limited to, and that is Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, and other belief systems. It has been limited to that until now. So, in order for us to function as Elohim, we have to bring these attitudes into the compliance with the order of the universe. We cannot do that if we hate our children. We cannot do that if we hate the entities that were brought into existence from us, that we ought to bring into compliance with the universe. And the way we do that is our desire. Have you not noticed, and I'm sure you have, that everything that we have desire in terms of everything being brought to the surface that besets us has been done? Every bit of it, because of our desire. We created the atmosphere for this to happen. There will not be balance. There will not be harmony without desire. And that is our desire. So as we speak, the things that we sought to bring to the surface are the very things of substance that we are to bring balance to this earth. We are to use that to bring balance. How are we using that? When all of these things are brought to the surface, we begin to speak about them, speak to them, and express our desire for balance. That is creating, it's the action is abracadabra. I create with words. And that's exactly what we are doing. Now, we are doing it because we are Elohim. I hope I get this right, what I'm seeing. We do it because we are Elohim. And if we have not embraced that reality, our desire will be empty. How is it that we did this because we are Elohim? How is it that we brought all of this to the surface because we are Elohim? How did that happen?
Excuse me, could you go into what bringing it to the surface means? Is
Yes.
that earth consciousness? Is
making visible to all humans the actions of greed, the actions of hatred, anything that is antithetical to balance, anything that presents itself as being superior to anyone in this earth. Those are the principles that we desire to surface. Is that what you are asking, Barbara? Okay. So those principles are the substance that we use to create. And the reason our desire is honored is because we have embraced who we are. There is no way that that spirit without a body could bring to the surface anything. We had to occupy the remnants of this earth in order for us to be in rhythm with the universe. And our desires come to fruition because we speak them. It is the earth awareness that we are, our earthly essence, coupled with our breath, which is us, spirit. So earthly essence and spirit are intertwined, and it becomes the womb that delivers harmony to humanity. And it has been hampered because we have been constantly accused of playing a race card when we tell the truth. And we have been consistently separated from the understanding of our origins. I was told that someone said that rather than go to the Kushite kingdom, how come we're not dealing with the kingdom in Ghana? The kingdom in Ghana would not exist if it had not been for the Kushite kingdom. The Kushite kingdom would not exist if it had not been for the community of the Twa. So all of these things are interlocked. So when do we get to the place where we do not allow anyone to dictate to us not only who we are, but our obligations to this earth? We are not obligated to be enslaved to anyone. And we do not have the right to enslave anyone. That is not who we are. God doesn't enslave. Elohim does not enslave. Elohim frees us from the ignorance of who we are. Because when you are ignorant of who you are, there is absolutely nothing outside the parameter of what you would do. Nothing. You would do anything. But when you know who you are, the journey become a journey that continuously crushes you. And the crushing of us is the battles that we've had to get to where we are with family, with friends, etc. And some are continuing. That's the crushing of the olive to get the oil. That's the crushing of the grape to get the wine. So we are crushed for a reason. So now we are at a place where we don't have to be crushed anymore. We've already seen the foundation. We are now seeing the walls, meaning that we're beginning to see the solutions to all the adversity that the earth has endured. And now that we are functioning as Elohim, watch and see our desires unfold before our eyes. Because it is no good for as above, so is below to exist unless balance is manifested so that the human spirit, the human soul, the human eye can see it. Does that make sense?
So the challenge is, as knowing what we know, as we see things unfold, which are seemingly out of line, out of balance, out of harmony, instead of being concerned about it, and we should say, okay, what's the balance that's going to come out of this? See it in that light instead of seeing, instead of being pulled into depression, being pulled into doubt. That's the first thing that ought to come from us. I'm not gonna say ought. I'm not gonna say should, want, or could. The first thing that I want to do is not see the earthly side of that. I want to see, okay, what's behind that? What's spiritually going to be shown to us or shown to others that brings things in harmony? Because the way things look right now, we could let that overcome us. But now that we know who we are, we need to use the fodder, the material of creation that you were talking about, all this chaos, to say, now let's see how that's going to bring itself into balance, because that's our desire. Instead of, oh my, woe is me, Democrats look like they got. I don't want to participate in that kind of discussion of the woe is me anymore, or what's to become of us, who gonna help us now kind of thing. We help ourselves, and we help ourselves by creating with this chaos that we see. And the most positive way that we can help ourselves is to see the harmony and the balance within the creation, within the chaos. That's just the way I choose to see it.
Well, that's just the way it is, because when you look at whether it is the creation allegory from the Cushites, or whether it's the allegory from the Bible we read, all of it came out of chaos. We bring order to chaos. That's balance, isn't it? I think I saw Kathy on mute, then I saw Ron and Levon.
Yeah.
Okay. Huh? Kathy?
Go ahead, Kat.
I was only agreeing with Barbara because she was saying we wait to see how it's going to fix itself. And I think the fixing itself starts with us making certain we stay in a place. And I think she said this wholeheartedly, that we stay in a place of balance, that we don't unravel when we see things unraveling. We stay the course, keep ourselves balanced and centered, and let this thing play out. And then, when she said, see the spirituality in it, that's a little hard for me sometimes, because I don't always know how it's going to play out, but I trust, based on what we're being taught and who we are and what we know, that it all has to work for good. And so I guess my question is, even when you don't see it and you don't know, we still have to, how do we make certain that we just don't get caught up in the fray of it all, and we plan to stay in a place of balance? Because we don't always know how it's going to look in the end, but don't we have to just trust that in the end it all works for good?
Oh, absolutely. Without trust, there's no functionality, meaning that we had to trust what we saw in the book in order for us to trust that we are Elohim. We had to trust that. The journey that we embarked upon came from trust. When you see God, he will appear to be ungodly or whatever I said. I don't remember years ago. That's trust. Follow me as I follow God. Trust. And look where it's led us. You see?
Yeah.
Actually, what you said is, the closer we get to God, the more ungodly he appears to us. Is how you said it years ago.
Right. Thank you. That's what I said years ago. Okay. Let me go to Ron. Where are you? Oh, okay.
I'm
Ron.
here.
I'm looking for you on the screen.
I'm hoping that the strength of this desire that you talk about takes us to a place where we're no longer reactive. I think we're close to that. And I think understand this is a major part of understanding who we are and understanding desire. And I can't remember which one of y'all said it. I don't know if it was you or George that talks about we must harness the energy from the beginning and hold on to that. And that is the energy that continues to grow us and reveal to us and make us aware of self and make us one and understand that we are one with the universe, so that we're not reactive, so that when things happen, because things are happening so rapidly, it may affect each and every one of us differently. But if we understand and hold on to that strength of who we are, and from the beginning of time, and as George went back and said something that I had no question at the time because I was chewing on it, but he talked about being in existence before there was a physical world, understanding who you are and knowing that you are that light, that energy that was here before there was a beginning. If we can see that and hold on to it, then we no longer be reactive. We no longer get pulled back and forth into different lanes and have to recenter ourselves. So I think a major, what we're doing now is a major part of that, kind of cementing that in our hearts and in our mind, because we all have the desire to see it. We all have the desire to be there. And I think we're a lot closer than we realize.
Yeah.
I
And
began
I'm sorry, go ahead, Pastor.
well, Levon after, and then I saw someone else on mute. You guys, let me say this. Okay, Audrey. Let me say this. Beginning was brought into existence for us. If it beginning was brought into existence so that we could be in a material world. If so, beginning did not exist and would not exist if it was not the desire of Elohim for the purpose of bringing us into existence. Does that make sense? And as far as the reacting, Ron, I remember some years ago, I don't know whether Barbara remembers this or not, but her statement was, we have to learn to stop reacting and start responding. That's when things change. And I remind myself of that quite frequently. So that, to me, that's a part of sitting with something. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. I'm done. Levon, I'm just pointing, just like you can see me pointing at you. Levon?
Oh, no, I wasn't saying anything.
Oh, okay. Okay. Audrey. I'm mute.
I'm kind of responding to Kathy and Barb, but when you talked about chaos and how desire is the catalyst for chaos, and when you were talking about it like the void and chaos, and the desire made it fall out into animals and the trees and the whatever, all the order. That really resonated with me. And then you said,
excuse me.
and I don't know if I got this right, and this is my question. You said something about earth consciousness and spirit and bringing those together. And you said there has to be action. So what is our action? Is our action that we sort of harness this chaos and then turn it into the energy of desire?
Our energy.
And is that done through meditation, or what is the action part of it?
The action part primarily is what we're doing now. However, once we desire everything to be brought to the surface, what surface? Chaos. The chaos that's been lurking below, right? And we are to transform that energy of chaos into order. And when we bring it to order, what happens? We see love and kindness, we see justice, we see reality, as opposed to this illusion of existence. Does that answer your question? Audrey?
Yeah, basically. So we're sort of using the chaos, because chaos is creating energy.
Yes.
So we use that energy and convert it into desire for harmony and balance.
Okay. Yeah, chaos is definitely energy that we are to transform. Chaos existed. The Creator says to us, look at this. Whether you read it from the Cushite or whether you read it from the Bible, the Creator says, look at this. I want you to understand something. I'm going to give you an image of how to create. First of all, in order to create, you must know what beginning is. Go to your beginning. And when beginning brought into existence the heaven and the earth, enlightenment and earth consciousness, then the Creator said, it takes this. This is the foundation of all the creation. Your desire for order, your desire for balance. And the whole story of creation is not so much about how the world was created as it is about showing us how to create spiritually. It's a roadmap for us to create spiritually. And at some point, maybe we can go into that roadmap and see the essence of how we are to create, because that is the roadmap for us that we read in Genesis. So yes, the repurposing of chaotic energy for the benefit of humanity is what our desire is. Does that make sense? Okay, thank you. Was there someone else who, George, I'm sorry, yeah.
Good morning, everyone. Or whoever was about to speak can go ahead.
No, go ahead,
I'm
George. You
sorry.
got it. You got it, G.
Hey, thank you, Mr. George out of Philly. One of the things I want to add in the cable line, everyone could read in a cable line. And if you didn't understand what you were reading, someone would aid you, or elders were at a high degree in the cable line. And by way of the elders, chaos was at a minimal. And a guy by the name of Theodosius, he ruled half of Greece. He took strong offense to the schooling of Kemet, the Shiites, the Kabbalah, and he started to dismantle them and only keep that kind of reading for a certain element of people. The other aspect of our ancestors, and one of the things that I go by in the Staley building at South Carolina State, the old home economics building, and it still may be there, is a writing on the wall saying a person's teeth should see poverty, yet a person's teeth should never experience poverty. There's always something in life to smile about, and food is a good way to see a person's teeth. And that's something that I live by. If you around me, you may see poverty, not going to experience it. And I ain't talking about money and taking people out to eat. I'm talking about a word of encouragement. So that's something that I think. So whenever you hear ancient African proverb, that is a proverb from Kabbalah. The other aspect of, and if our desire is to bring balance, or if my desire is to bring balance, system has to be fair, not equal, yet fair. And what I mean by that is, there's no way a football coach in high school should make more than that's not a fair system. I'm not against what football coach makes salary-wise. I'm just against, it's not a fair system. I think a Head Start teacher should make about 150,000 a year. So if we desire balance, or if I desire balance, I don't believe in that equal rights stuff. I believe in the system should be fair. And when you have a fair system, you promote the energy of egalitarian, which means everyone eats at the table. And I read some of Apostle Paul's writings. He wrote for Rome. He did not write for humanity. In a comparative degree, Apostle Paul writings to Bob Marley writings. Bob Marley writings trump Apostle Paul writings. So if my desire or if your desire is to bring balance in my animal kingdom, the system has to be fair. Thank you very much.
You're quite welcome. George, may I speak to George?
Yes, please.
Okay. When we talk about equality, and I know all of us see equality the same way, because all of us came through the same system of education. When we look at equality through the eye of the Cushite or the Torah or Elohim, we look at the equality being that everyone has a right to a life devoid of poverty. When we look at that through the eye, we see that equality means that you have justice meted out based upon your actions. It doesn't mean that you have the same all the way down the line. The spiritual equality is quite different from the equality, the idea rather of equality that we have been taught, in our educational structures. Thank you, George. George?
Okay, yes. We're just gonna.
By the way, excuse me 1 second, George. Send me that information.
Hey, yeah.
Okay. George,
Reb, I had to take it off. I had to take it off mute. What did you say, Reb?
I said thank you.
Oh, okay, though. You're welcome.
Yes. George, the stuff you have on the chart, send it to me, please, or at least the page numbers in the book where you read it. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, what I wanted to share when Ron was speaking about before the beginning, the Twa and Mbuti deepest and most original thought was the concept of existence before the beginning began. And what I want to do is just read from Spirituality Before Religions, where it talks about, spirituality is unseen science, and science is seen spiritually. But I want to read from page 9 past, because I think this gives a better clarity in terms of how I would want to say it, from my heart. But it says, before the beginning began, before existence existed, thought in the universal's mind created desire in the heart. And desire spoke word in the heart, and word made flesh. Flesh brought all and everything into being and started the process of the cosmos becoming the universe. But the Creator first thought before the beginning was. And as we talk about spiritual involution, and now we're looking at it from a physical evolution, it says, I want to know me. I want to think, see, hear, smell, taste, and feel, but I cannot because I am spiritual. I am in potential rest in my eternal space. I want to be and continue to become so that I can know that I am who I am. I am the creator who will know that I am the creator, but the only way to know it is to come through physical form. And I think this reading, gives me a perspective in terms to know self. And so when we talk about to know thyself, and to begin to realize how the Twas was able to appreciate their intimacy with the cosmos, their intimacy with the stars, astrology, numerology. You know, I think all of this factors into us being able to appreciate coming into this physical form, but at the same time realizing that nature is still our first or original teacher. And so it just made me think about some of the experiences that the Dogons, the Dohemis, well, anyway, their experiences through their journey. But I just wanted to read that particular piece because you talked about desire, but the proof of desire, you know, is in the pursuit. So what are we pursuing?
Right.
So I just wanted to, share those thoughts.
Thank you. Any questions or comments about that? I found the passage, Audrey, that you were asking about. So are there
I
any?
don't want to read.
I beg your pardon?
I don't want to. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I don't want to read too much into it, but it sounds like he is saying that your desire to know self, your desire for truth, is what brought everything into existence. And that desire for truth is older than chaos. Chaos then came, or darkness came into existence because there are some that don't desire to know themselves and don't desire to know truth. But if that desire is older, then that spoke to me, and I don't, like I said, I don't want to read more into it. But what did y'all get out of that? Am I seeing that correctly?
Yeah. Desire. The desire started with the desire of Elohim to create. Barbara, were you getting ready to speak?
Yeah, I was just gonna reference back to.
Hold on 1 second, Barbara.
some-
SC, after you, Barbara, SC had a comment. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just simply gonna reference back to the comments made earlier about Mayat and principles of Mayat, and truth and balance and justice are some of the basic cornerstones of that. So yeah, that truth is truth has always been there. So yeah, I agree with what Ron said. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. SC?
Yes, I was just gonna comment that, just going back to the truth. That's why it's so important, I guess, for us to understand the truth, because until we really understand that, we can't fully create, and I guess can you clear this up? But I feel like we can't fully create until we understand the truth, and that's why it's so many barriers to creating, because we should be creating based on the needs of mankind. We should desire what's best, and not necessarily if we try to create just based on what we want. Those things kind of conflict sometimes. So can you speak a little bit about, the process of creating and definitely needing the truth, because we can't just, I don't know if it's, I won't say law, but it's not allowed just to create anything. And we think we're creating something, but we're really just, going back to the chaos. We may be feeding chaos and not truly creating something, but it seems like we have to really understand truth before we can create, because that sort of protects us against creating just based on what we want, and our desires are really should be based on what's really needed. If you can speak to that.
Sure. What is truth? The truth is the energy and the rhythm of the universe, and us being one with it. So when we're talking about truth, we're not necessarily talking about the words as much as the energy the energy that formed the words. there had to be an energy before what we call truth is truth. Truth speaks to how reality really existed and exists currently. So it is impossible to create with the rhythm of the universe if there is no truth. If there is not a desire for truth. When we search for truth, we actually find ourselves. Our search for truth has led us to beginning. So if we are at beginning, we are, then our creative desires only function in concert with reality as opposed to illusions. Does that make sense, Esther?
Yes, it does. Yeah, I just trying to connect that with the truth and how we how we view truth, but definitely tapping into that energy and understanding that it's it's all a part of the verse and the connection is there.
Thank you. Is there anyone who would like to speak to that?
I kind of would like to add to that, yeah.
Okay.
In terms of our ability to create that is informed by our awareness of the truth and who and what we are, the only thing that the creator itself can create is more of itself. In the process of us learning to know the self and know who and what we are and realize that is the process of learning to recreate the self that we are, which is Elohim, which is ultimately the creator. And so the the ways in which we try to figure that out while we're in the process of recreating our sense of self sort of results in everything that we see in terms of the way human life plays out in the physical, in terms of the way we change and evolve in the material experience. But the point it is leading to, perhaps for lack of a better term, is the knowledge of self that is what is drawn from the beginning, which is that point of creation, which is that point of the desire to learn what it means to be a creator. And the closer we get, I feel like, to that point of knowledge of self, the more we create in terms of culture, physically, in terms of society, etc., things that are more in line with the nature of the Elohim that we are. And hopefully that helps. But it's like we don't have to know it all before we can begin the process of attempting to recreate ourself and create from our sense of self, whatever that sense of self is. But it is a process whereby we keep adding to that sense of self, and then what we choose to create out of that during that process changes and evolves over time. But like I said, it is all heading back towards the ultimate knowledge of the nature of self, that is being that we are, as we said, Elohim, that we are creators, and we are learning to sort of do what that means and learning to be what that means.
Thank you.
What you and
Thank
Pastor just talked about related to what Klotz says. Klotz says that truth is right, a harmonious direction. Understanding what balance is. You got to understand that. And then it says that it liberates and opens possibilities. That's what you were talking about, Nick, when you say, then once you begin unfolding that truth, you add to it. You provide more substance, if you will, to the truth that you are the essence of Elohim. So it opens up other possibilities. As Pastor, you said, Elohim does not enslave. Elohim liberates. And so truth is also that liberation of understanding in us the essence of who we are, and that there are so many other possibilities that are unlimited, rather than the limited possibilities we've understood with our earth consciousness. With beyond earth consciousness, spiritual consciousness says there is no limit. So that's what truth is to in a sense as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? What's it? When you experience the truth, you will find that the truth liberates you. Know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. It's better understood the other way. When you experience truth, you will see that truth is a liberator. Any questions or comments before I endeavor to read this?
Are you reading something along the lines of what we're talking about, or are you changing course?
I'm actually going back to a question that Audrey raised. Go ahead.
Okay, because I want to kind of go into ask this question, because I'm stuck on the African proverbs today, and listening to the discussion on truth and all that we've said about truth. When we begin to have the identity or going into the knowing the identity of who we are, George says this all the time, George from Philly, that we are the creator having a human experience. So the chaos and all that we've been describing is the creator living through this human experience that we're having. But then the other part of that African proverb says, treat the creator in others as you treat the creator within you. When I read that, that took me to a place of saying, if I can get this thing right within me and understand who I am as the creator, the spiritual creator that I am will appeal to the spiritual creator in that one who does not know that he is the spiritual creator too, and hopefully change his point of view through my example, thereby bringing them to a point. To me, that proverb speaks to what balance should look like. And I may be missing the mark on saying how we get to that point of recognizing that I am the creator, having a human experience. And when I can get that resolved in me, that I am that creator, then I can treat the creator in others who may not even know that they are creators with the same respect and reverence that I treat being the creator. I don't take that for granted. I don't take that lightly. I am a seeker of truth. I'm going to find that truth. I'm going to live by that truth, and I'm going to be that example of truth to that who does not know he is a creator too. And to me, that's what balance should look like. And I just wanted your thoughts and comments on that.
Agree. It is what it looks like.
Can I just ask Kathy, I'm sorry, Pastor, before you do that, Kathy, if treat the creator and others, what?
It says, treat the creators and others as you treat the creator within you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Pastor, for letting me interrupt. Thank you, Kathy.
You're welcome.
Cosmic law. Mm-hmm.
This truth. God, your question escapes me. Speak to.
Like, once I know that I am a creator having a human experience and recognizing that the creative power in me, I reverence that, I embrace that, I live that. How am I showing, or I see it as according to the proverb, I am to, even for that person who does not know that he is a creator, I am to be the example to that person on how to become the spiritual creator that he or she was meant to be. And so I was just saying, speak to that, please.
You are a classic example of that. Why is it that the Q-tips walk up to you and tell you their life story?
I don't know.
That's why they're attracted to something that they are not aware of. They're attracted to Elohim, and Elohim can bring solace to them. Elohim brings comfort to them. So we do that without even recognizing that we are doing it based upon who we are in terms of having embraced that we are Elohim. And guess what? We functioned that way even before we knew, even when we thought to embrace that was blasphemy. If you think about how you were functioning prior to that, especially in your interaction with people. Does that make sense?
It does. And I think what resonates so deeply with me too is, how do I treat the creator within me? How do I see me as that creator? That to me is a responsibility that should not be taken lightly, because I can't treat the creator in you the way it should be treated, or the power in you should be treated, without knowing how to regulate and treat the power that I am, the creative force that I am.
How do you treat yourself?
Mhm.
That's the question. How do you treat yourself? Do you treat yourself in a way that is inferior to who you are? And the inferior that I speak of is talking down to people, treating people totally different than you are supposed to treat them. Do unto others as you have them do unto you. That's a Cushite saying that's written in the pyramids on the walls. So the question about do unto others as you would have do unto you is saying be Elohim to others because you want them to be Elohim to you. Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you.
You're welcome. Think about what's going on here. Truth. We are at a stage where we are actually explained in abstracts. Think about it. Truth is an abstract. So how is it that we have had this discussion for this length of time, all of it interlocking about an abstract? Is because to Elohim, nothing is an abstract. Truth is who you are. So when we talk about what truth is, we're talking about ourselves. We're talking about Elohim. So Ron said earlier that we are, I think his words were, we are closer than we think. I agree with that. I think today is an opportunity for us to see ourselves, not only where we are, but who we are in a totally expansive light, as opposed to being seeing ourselves in a different light. It's seeing ourselves in an expansive way. We are dealing with the nuts and bolts of our existence in this earth, in this body. Being Elohim, being functional in these bodies. The moment that we seek to get even, get angry, or want to do something to someone or see something happen to them, then we have reverted to an illusion as opposed to living in the reality of our essence. Does that make sense? Elohim doesn't do that. The chaos that we encounter does that. The chaos. We are still at beginning. Guess what? The chaos that covers the deep is still covering it. All the chaos that we see around us, it's the same chaos that's spoken of in Genesis, that's spoken of in the Mayat principle or the Memphis theology. All of that's the same. the bubble of chaos is still covering the deep. And the light is the only solution to bringing that chaos to order. Does that make sense? We in this human experience have a bubble of chaos hovering over. And the only reason I say a bubble of chaos hovering over is because we have embraced who we are, Elohim. Prior to that, we are within the boundaries of that chaos. We are part of that chaos. And every time we revert to where we were, we become a part of that chaos. And you cannot live in a chaotic space and expect to bring order to that chaos. Because if that's the case, then you have not brought order to yourself. What order to yourself is when you function as Elohim without having to fluctuate about how you function in the chaos, out of the chaos. That cannot happen if our objective, and our objective is to bring order, to bring balance. We are the balance that we seek. No different than we are the God that we've sought. We are the balance that we seek. And just like we did not allow the popular beliefs about Elohim to deter us, we cannot allow anything else to deter us from where we are in terms of what we have embraced. Make sense? Any questions, comments?
I wanted to add one small thing to what was just said in regards to seeing the creators and others and responding or speaking, communicating with that creator once you see that creator and that other person. On the other side of that,
Just stop a little.
okay. The other side of that is it also heightens and changes the relationship in a positive way with the creator that you identify with and see and know in yourself as well. So in a sense, your identity is automatically being extended beyond yourself. That idea of saying treat others, well, starting off at the elementary level of treat, basically golden rule, treat others as you would like to be treated, then forces you to then see yourself in the other person and consider how you want to be treated and then how they would want to be treated. So it automatically moves you on from the individual and seeing yourself as a singularity, individual. So I just wanted to say that seeing that creator in the other person as well, the other side of that, like I said, is that the creator in yourself, for lack of better words, that you understand grows beyond even that of what it is, because now the creator that you are goes beyond just the individual self that you once recognized yourself as.
Thank you, sir. Questions, comments? Okay, let me read this. This is a quote, Audrey, from Count Konstantin Volny. Anyway, I'm gonna send you the name anyway, okay? The ancient Egyptians were true Negroes of the same type as all native-born Africans. Just think that this race of Black men, today our slaves, and the object of our scorn is the very race to which we owe our arts, sciences, and even the use of speech. Just imagine finally that it is in the midst of peoples who call themselves the greatest friends of liberty and humanity that one has approved the most barbarous slavery and questioned whether Black men have the same intelligence as whites. That's the exact quote. So my paraphrasing it probably left a lot out of it. But I will send that in a moment. Any other questions or comments? Okay, I think that we have covered a lot, and I by no means think we have depleted anything, because, well, I'm acting like we did not say that we could continue, because I'm holding off some stuff. So let me speak to that. We've talked about quite a bit, and how did we get to where we are today? We talked about Elohim. We talked about the nation born on the waters. We've talked about the purpose for us being in this space that we occupy physically as well as spiritually. It is incumbent upon us to remember that enslavement pushed us to where we are right now. The barbaric nature of it is reprehensible. However, nothing takes place in this universe without approval from the universe, meaning that when we were told to dominate, that meant that the universe gave us permission to do in this earth what we choose to do. And we have the choice of being spiritual or not. We can be a part of the chaos. We can even create the chaos. Out of the ignorance of ourselves, of who we are, ignorance of us, knowing who we are, what happened? We started a journey looking for God while still being enslaved, not realizing that the God that we are was taken away from us or denied to even exist. The spiritual essence of our origin was diminished to nothing. And we embrace that. And we try to regain who we are by identifying with those who enslaved us. And the reality of that can be seen when we look at the civil rights movement. The civil rights movement was, yes, about freedom, about equality, but the equality and freedom that we sought, the freedom was not coming from our Creator. The freedom was coming from the hands that enslaved us. Equality, we were begging for it to be equal, meaning that we were desiring to be like the ones who enslaved us. We wanted to be equal to them. And that in itself led us to a place of confusion, of continued confusion rather. And that continuous confusion has brought us to a space of chaos within the confines of our communities. And we have spoken to that quite a few times, and some of us have worked most of our lives in community service, making every effort to bring order to that chaos. We have gone to court, seeking balance in this society without really realizing that it was the courts who said that a white man has, African has no rights that a white man is obligated to respect. The Dred Scott decision. We have petitioned Congress, and Congress is the one who said, who wrote in the Constitution the Second Amendment, which meant that it was based, the Second Amendment was based on the laws of South Carolina. And the law of South Carolina said that every white man was required to have a gun. And no African could have any weapon whatsoever. And any white man could search the house of the African and seeking to see if they had any weapon, even a knife, whether it was a knife or machete, it didn't matter. Anything that they could do harm with was taken away from them by any white man. So every white man had been deputized to take advantage of every African. And even at the inception of the NRA, the NRA was brought into existence in New York in 1877, I believe it is. And its purpose was marksmanship. And they fought gun control. And ever since, they moved out of New York to headquarters in Washington, because they have always been in lockstep with Congress, meaning that the governing body in New York gave them $25,000 at their organization to purchase land for marksmanship. And then they moved to DC because they had inroads into the government so that they could maintain their possession of weapons without regard to anything, meaning that they could be a criminal and still have access to their weapons. Now, the reason I bring this up is because there was one time in history when the NRA was for gun control. When the NRA saw the weapons that the Black Panthers were carrying in public, they began to cry out for gun control. We have sought to free ourselves through fostering a revolution. Now, Panthers never used their weapons, by the way. All that was a lie, and that's a story for another day. We have sought to do it through Black nationalism, and Black nationalism is simply a structure that's separated from white folks. Period. We have sought to do it by virtue of petitioning the UN for a plebiscite. A plebiscite can only be sanctioned by the UN. And a plebiscite is a nation within a nation. It is a tract of land that is set aside for the occupancy of Africans within this country. And it is the nation's security is enforced by the United Nations. That's a plebiscite. We have sought that. That in itself also was separation. Then we misconstrued what Pan-Africanism is. Pan-Africanism, as it was first taught to me anyway, was the movement to bring all Africans together under one roof, one existing roof. Pan-Africanism, according to Marcus Garvey, was inclusive of all Africans in the diaspora being move back to the continent to avoid the abuse and to use their creative juices for the benefit of Africans only. The true essence of Pan-Africanism, I think I mentioned this in the beginning, is about recognizing the unification of Africans regardless of where they live on this earth, regardless of geographical location. Kabbalah is still the energy of our origin and the energy that keeps us alive. If that were not the reality of who we are, we would not be in existence today as many times as genocidal maniacs have made efforts to rid us from wipe us off the face of this earth. So right now, we are not at a crossroads anymore. We have come to the place where we understand that the existence of humanity depends on our existence. Some years ago, Nick made a statement that if all the Africans were to leave this country, it will, my words, not his, I just remember the word that he chose, this country would dissolve in 2 weeks. They could not live without our presence. Am I correct? Yeah, okay. So Nick nods his head for those who can't see him. Yes, that is what he was saying. So we have come to understand why. Even when Nick made the statement, we did not understand the why of it. Why would this be? And it is because we are the life of the earth. And now that we are embracing that, now that we are living that, now that we understand that being the life of this earth has obligations. And the obligation of being the life of this earth is to create in our image, the image of Elohim. And that is repurposing the barbaric energy that has been dominant in the earth. In order for righteousness to prevail, we have to be dominators of this material world. And as dominators of this material world, all the chaos that we have desired for mankind to see is now the fodder for our creative juices. And it is not something that we reach out physically and grasp. It is something that we embrace within. And when we embrace it within, we begin to function as Elohim without even realizing that we are doing it. When your desire is deep for you to embrace the reality of being Elohim, no one has to tell you when you're off the pathway. You can feel it, you sense it. And that goes all the way back to what we were talking about when we talk about sitting with something. The reason you sit with it is because you are seeking balance. The reason you sit with it is because you know that you're on the verge, if not already crossing that line between being a part of the chaos or being the order itself. Sitting with it gives us that sense of balance, that sense of unicity with the universe, that reminds us not only of who we are, but also reminds us that we repurpose chaos, we don't create it. That sitting with it reminds us to be still and know that you are God, know that you are Elohim. Be still and know that I am Elohim, I am God. That's speaking to, that's telling us rather, how to be Elohim. Just be still when the chaos, you become a part of the chaos, or you are about to cross that line to be involved with chaos, be still and know who you are. Know that when I experience that I am Elohim, then I am in balance, or I am in rhythm with the universe itself. My functional frequency is the same frequency that the universe functions on. And we realize that we are the black hole of wisdom that brings understanding to the earth. And we understand that black hole is a womb, and that black hole has an exit into the light. And it has, and the stream of light that emanates from that black hole carries us into another dimension of understanding. And it is actually the umbilical cord that brings the wisdom of the darkness to the understanding of the light. That's who we are. And as we sit with things, that's what we see. Now, as we talk about things, as we put words to who we are, as we put words to understanding the writings, understanding the scrolls, that Shabaka stone that we're talking about, or the Memphis theology, was 13 feet long when it was written on the papyrus. It was 13 feet long and 13 feet wide, 13 inches wide rather. So when we embrace who we are, all of that, we become to realize that everything that's on that papyrus that was written is who we are. All the symbols that we use to expedite our understanding of courage, our understanding of royalty, our understanding of the pathway that we travel. All of that is who we are. It is not in us. We are it. This body, the reason the body is considered dead is because it's not spiritual. This body are the fragments of this earth. It is in us. We are far greater, there are much more to us. We call it the aura. The aura is the energy that is not emanating from this body. It is the energy that we see that is in contact with this body. The energy that we are is much greater. It covers much more space than these bodies are able to hold. So when we talk about the I am you and you are me and the interaction of that, what we began to see is statements like, and I use this frequently, what's up, dog? Nobody sent a memo to that. So how did it get from the East Coast to the West Coast? Nobody walked around sending memos about that. How is it that what we talk about, we see it in the ether? We put it in the ether rather, and we see it in action around us. It's because, it's not because of our bodies, it's because of Elohim. Elohim having a human experience is speaking to, and I'm maybe putting some words in George's mouth, but he'll correct me, I'm sure. The idea of Elohim having a human experience is speaking to experiencing the chaos that we ought to bring order to. Elohim cannot experience that chaos in its spiritual form. It has to experience that chaos in this body, because this body is a part of everything that's in this physical world. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Hello?
Yep.
Yes.
So thank you. So when we are talking about that experience, the purpose of that experience is not for us to simply sit down and complain about the chaotic experiences that we are encountering. It is for us to sit down and ponder the reality of who we are. Why am I here? The purpose-driven book was a mess. The purpose-driven life, is that it? It was a mess. It was more chaotic than anything else I read. You are not here to be a rich woman or rich man. You're not here for that purpose. You're not here to accumulate things. You are here for the purpose of breathing life into the chaos so it can be brought to order. The infusion of our energy through words and our actions in terms of our interaction with each other and other people, that is the creative substance that brings order to humanity. And that's who we are. And that's our purpose. So today, what we have done is brought humanity on a journey with us. And that journey with us is no different than what Jesus said to Nicodemus. He didn't say you must be born again. He said you must return to beginning. So today we have given opportunity to humanity to embrace beginning, and at the same time experience the energy of not only beginning, but the creative energy of who we are. And that creative energy is Elohim. That's our purpose. That's what we have done. That's what we are doing. So having said that, we are no longer searching for balance. We are balanced. We have released to the universe the authority to bring this balance into manifestation so that we can not only experience it, but we can see it as well. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Thank you, Nick. In our humanness, our human ways are chaos itself. And because of that, we would take every opportunity to interfere with balance by some of the stupid things we say, or by some of the words that we use to describe people, like saying that Trump is a racist. That's a part of the chaos. Trump is a motivator. Can you get with that? Trump is one of the greatest motivators we've ever seen in modern times. He has motivated people to search themselves and to search the antics, the policies, and the laws of this country. How has he done that? He has shown every loophole in the laws of this nation that allows Caucasians to do anything they want to do to each other, but more specifically to people of color. So what he has done, he has motivated those who are seeking truth to desire that this whole system becomes a shattered memory, and a nation being born in its wake. And that nation that is birthed is no different than the nation that was birthed on the waters. That nation that is birthed is a nation that is not defined by the buildings that it has or the laws that men have written, but defined by the laws of the universe and known by the way it embraces humanity and make a way for humanity to experience who it is, as opposed to who it was told it was. Does that make sense? Questions, comments? Are you in agreement with what I just said? Can you embrace that? Does it resonate with you?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. So the objective is this. The objective is to be an African with memory, as opposed to an African without memory. With the memory of who we are, with the memory of our origin, with the memory of our obligations based upon our origin. And we are not to be Americans without privilege. We are to be Africans who create privilege for everyone. And the privilege is not necessarily the material acquisitions that we make. The privilege is being able to embrace the essence of your being and live accordingly. When that happens, poverty ceases to exist. Spiritual poverty ceases to exist, as well as physical poverty. Until we eliminate, to the greatest extent that we are capable of, spiritual poverty, we will not be able to eliminate physical poverty. Because as we birth the knowledge and awareness of spirituality, we also manifest the same thing in this earth realm, and it brings about a change in how we acquire things and how we treat people, and it brings about a reality of the soul that shows us how to make sure that everything is taken care of. We are indeed the keeper of our brethren, but we are also our neighbor's keeper. And our neighbors is not the ones who just live next door. It's everyone on the earth. Any questions, comments? I'm done for now. I suggest very strongly that you do as Audrey has been doing, jotting down her questions and making notes of things that we've spoken of, and bringing those questions to us, if not now, tomorrow or the next day. I suggest very strongly that once we get off of the phone, that we interact with each other through conversation, because that is when we find out that we have more questions than we thought we had.
I do.
Go ahead, babe.
I do have a question. What was the name of that writing, that papyrus or stone or whatever you were talking about?
Which one? Talking about the one that's
13 feet.
13 feet long. That is the original Shabaka stone.
Shabaka.
Yeah, that's the original. It wasn't a stone written on, it was written on papyrus in the beginning, and it was 13 feet long.
Okay.
Yeah. So the reason it's called the Shabaka stone is because King Shabaka is the one who had it engraved on the Bauxite stone. That's why it's called the Shabaka stone.
Okay.
And that was 700 years after the original. Okay. Anyone else? Barbara?
I just want to say to everybody that today's discussion has been so powerful to me. It has resonated so much with me, and I do appreciate it. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank all of you guys. I feel the energy from all of you, but there's a greater sense of experiencing that energy simply by looking at each other. There is something to that. When we were in Africa, there were people who did not want their photograph taken because they felt like it was taking energy from them in order to create that image. I can see the relevance of that now, greater than I ever saw it. So last thing to you is this. Regardless of where you go, regardless of where you have been, what you have done, you have left a signature of your energy. And if you recount the places that you've been and look at the things that happened subsequently to your presence there, it would all make sense to you. It would all make sense to you. I remember saying to you guys when I was in Hawaii, I felt really bad because the air of servitude, slavery, was so thick. And the people of origin in Hawaii, the Hawaiians were burdened. You could see it in their faces that they were just existing. And now what we are seeing is a huge push in Hawaii for self-determination. Wherever we go, we don't just leave a heat signature, we leave an energy signature. I would prefer to say it that way. And energy is never destroyed. It's there. Thank you. If there aren't any questions or comments or last sayings, we will be together again tomorrow at 11 o'clock. So do some contemplation, meditation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we will pick up tomorrow.
Thank you for the discussion.
Thank you guys for your participation, questions, and the comments. What drove
Thank
this?
you.
So
Thank
anyway,
you, everyone.
Take care, family.
Thank you.
Good to see you all.
Thank you. Bye, y'all. Enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.